And we are back. Welcome to my preview and predictions for match day 8 of the Champions League, the final match day of the league phase of the Champions League. And this is where the real Champions League begins, because no matter what anyone says, tomorrow night is knockout football. 18 matches being played at the exact same time, and it is going to be utter chaos. So many teams still have the opportunity of qualifying for the top 8. So many teams still have the possibility of either dropping into the playoffs or moving up into the playoffs, which also means so many sides are at risk of still being eliminated, and so many teams still have that chance to claw their way in to those playoff spots and eliminate other teams. As you can see on your screen, there are 4 teams that have already been eliminated. I have blacked them out, and their badges will be blacked out in the actual prediction part of the video as well, just to give you guys as much info as possible as we go into this final match day. But I'm going to tell you right here, right now, this is where the true unpredictability of this competition will begin, because there is so much at stake for near enough every single team going into this final match day. As always, if you've enjoyed this Champions League series so far, please let me know by dropping a like on the video. If you're new around here, please do consider subscribing. We're going to be doing this all over again tomorrow for the 18 matches in the Europa League, and community polls are up on the community page right now, so you can have your say on those 18 matches as well. And of course, when it gets to the knockout stages, when it gets to the playoffs, etc., we're going to be covering every single match across the knockout stages of the Champions League as well. So make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any of that stuff. Without any further ado then, this is how we're going to be running this video. I do this the same way every single time. We're going to start at the top of the table and work our way down. And as you look at the list of fixtures right here, you can actually see that basically all of the teams at the top are avoiding each other, which just makes things even more dramatic. So you're basically going to have knockout matches between sides trying to get into the top 8, playing against sides trying to get into the playoffs. It's going to be a crazy, crazy day of action in the Champions League tomorrow night. So let's get straight into it with arguably the most meaningless game of the lot, because we have first place Arsenal taking on last place Kairat Almaty. I say that there is nothing to play for. Do not forget that there is £250,000 worth of prize money for every single position that you finish in the Champions League. So even though Kairat are down in 36th, a victory for them here at the Emirates could be worth up to an additional £750,000, as they can still get as high as 33rd. So there's still something on the line for them here. As for Arsenal, they've obviously won their first 7 out of 7 in the Champions League so far, and know that even a single point in this fixture will guarantee them top spot, the maximum prize money. But even if they lose, they're still guaranteed to finish in the top 2, which is the same position in regards to who they would play in the next round. First and second are grouped together, so it's a real good position for Arsenal to be in. Last week, Arsenal were able to win away at Inter Milan, 3-1. For Kairat, it was a 4-1 home defeat to Club Brugge. Realistically, this game is only going to go one way. In terms of the team news, Arsenal are obviously thoroughly expected to change pretty much their entire lineup. This match is pretty meaningless to them. They also have Declan Rice and Mikel Merino suspended for this match anyway. Obviously, they've had a bad run in the Premier League over the last couple of weeks, and they want to keep their key players ready for their next big Premier League game next weekend. As for Kairat, their superstar youngster from Kazakhstan, Satpayev, is unfortunately still looking like he's going to be out for this match. He's missed the last couple of Champions League games. Looks like he's not going to be back in time for this one. Realistically, Arsenal should be winning this game fairly comfortably, even if Kairat went full first team and went all out to try and get a bit of extra prize money. Whatever side Arsenal put out really should be beating them regardless. I'm starting off today's video with a 3-0 win for Arsenal, which would mean it'd be a 100% record and top place in the Champions League for them. Basically, from this point onwards, it gets chaotic, and we move to our second game, which is, of course, second place Bayern Munich. They are going to be travelling to PSV Eindhoven in this match. Now, for Bayern, they are guaranteed a top 8 finish. They're actually guaranteed a top 4 finish, so not an awful lot on the line for them, but still you'd want to finish in that top 2 to have the best possible next round opponent. They were able to get a victory last week 2-0 over Union Saint-Gilloise. As for the Dutch side PSV, they have got everything on the line here. 22nd as things stand, they are on 8 points. There are 4 other teams currently on 8 points going down to into the elimination zone. However, PSV have the best goal difference of these 5 teams so far. They did lose 3-0 at Newcastle last week, which means that even a draw may not be enough for them to secure a playoff spot here if results don't go their way. So having to beat Bayern Munich at home in your final game could be a seriously tough ask for them. But again, just remember, Bayern Munich don't need to win this game to guarantee themselves a top 8 finish. They've already got it, so that could play into that Bayern Munich team news. In terms of the weekend fixtures, PSV made multiple changes to their starting lineup, and it actually affected them as they ended up drawing 2-2 at home to NAC. As for Bayern, they suffered a shock defeat at home to relegation thrashing Augsburg in the Bundesliga, playing pretty much their full first. So they did still make a couple of changes, but interesting result nonetheless. In terms of the team news, PSV, of course, will have their star players back for this match. However, last week, Till and Salahadin both went off with injuries in their defeat at Newcastle. For Bayern, Kim Min-jae is going to be suspended following his red card against USG, but they do also have a fair few injuries in their backline as well. Ultimately, I think this fixture just comes down to what team Bayern Munich put out. If they put out their strongest 11, I do fear for PSV in this fixture. If they play a weakened side, I think PSV have a very good chance. Personally, I think we are still going to see a relatively strong side from Bayern Munich, and I do think that Bayern are going to be the side that comes out on top in the end. Regardless, though, I think we're going to see some goals in this match. I think both teams are going to be pretty gung-ho, and I think we're going to see some goals at both ends of the pitch. At the end, though, I'm going to go for a 3-2 win to Bayern Munich. Now things start getting even more serious. We have Benfica down in 29th, taking on Real Madrid in 3rd. However, unlike Arsenal and unlike Bayern Munich, Real Madrid in 3rd place are not guaranteed to get themselves in the top 8 if they end up losing this fixture. They are on 13 points. That is only 2 points ahead of 13th. Remember, only the top 8 get those spots. So Real Madrid only 2 points ahead of 13th. 3 points ahead of 15th. So there's a possibility that all of those sides could go above Real Madrid if this result does not go their way. And my words, is it going to be an uphill task for the Los Blancos, because they're playing against one of their former managers in Jose Mourinho. And of course, Benfica currently sit 29th in the table, which means they're going to have to win this match to get above that list of teams that I was just speaking about that are on 8 points, because they are behind them as things stand. So for Benfica, it is absolutely must win. For Real Madrid, it is absolutely must not lose. That being said, Benfica had won their previous 2 Champions League matches before their 2-0 defeat to Juventus last week, whereas Real Madrid, they come into this off the back of that 6-1 thrashing of Monaco last week, and this weekend getting that all-important 2-0 win away at Villarreal in the La Liga. So Real Madrid coming into this on fairly decent form. Benfica also picked up a victory at the weekend, but it is a massively tough task for them. In terms of the team news, Benfica are going to be without the likes of Rios and Luca Bacchio, and Real Madrid are going to be without the likes of Militao and Rudiger. However, neither side have any fresh concerns coming into this match. The question really just is, can Jose Mourinho produce one more masterclass against one of his former clubs and get his side into those playoff spots? Realistically, if they get the result here, they've got a chance, because a lot of the sides in this scrap for those final places are playing against difficult opponents. So there is a chance for Benfica if they can get the victory here. But with Real Madrid also needing the result and how well they have still played throughout this Champions League campaign so far, I still think Real Madrid are going to edge it in the end. Think it's going to be close, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Real Madrid. Next up, we have Liverpool in 4th place. One of the best sides in terms of European form in recent weeks. They have not been doing well domestically, though. It's now 5 games in the Premier League without a win for Liverpool. But another strong performance in Europe last week, winning 3-0 away at Marseille, means that they know if they manage to get a victory here in their final match day at home, they will be guaranteed a top 8 finish. Their opponents for this match are going to be Qarabag, and as for that Azerbaijani side, they did it last week. They did the job they needed to do. They got the victory at home to Frankfurt, which means that they are now in 18th place in the Champions League table, which basically should guarantee them a playoff spot. The likelihood of the amount of teams needed to overhaul them would require, like we say, PSV to beat Bayern, Benfica to beat Real Madrid, some of the other games we're going to talk about later where it's unlikely that the side chasing a playoff spot is going to win. Qarabag are going to need an awful lot of those teams to win and for them to lose this match in order for them to miss out on the playoff spot. And mathematically, it's also still possible for them to still qualify for the top 8. But again, that would also require pretty much all of those teams to end up losing. So for Qarabag, they're in a pretty safe spot right now, sitting in 18th. So it's basically just a free hit for them at Anfield coming into this fixture. As we said, they won 3-2 against Frankfurt last week. But strangely, despite their European performances, both sides then lost in the Premier League coming into this game. Liverpool lost at Bournemouth. Qarabag lost at home to Kapaz, which is actually a really damaging result for the Azerbaijani sides. It means they're now 4 points behind in their respective title race. In terms of the team news, Liverpool are actually kind of struggling defensively at the moment with Konate, Joe Gomez and Conor Bradley all potentially expected to miss this match. Obviously, Bradley definitely out for this fixture. As for Qarabag, no fresh concerns for them, and I think they'll give this a go. Again, reminder, £250,000 for every place you finish, and of course, the higher you finish in the playoffs, the potential better draw you'll get in the knockout stages. So there's all the reason for Qarabag to go for this, but I still think with Liverpool needing to get at least a point in this game to guarantee themselves that top 8 finish, you would expect Liverpool at Anfield to get the result here. Just bear in mind, Qarabag drew with Chelsea just a few weeks ago, so it's not out of the question that Qarabag can get a result against an English club here. Surely, though, Liverpool are going to get the victory. I'm going for a 2-0 win at Anfield. Next up, it's a battle of the Franks as Eintracht Frankfurt take on Thomas Frank's Tottenham Hotspur. Now, for Tottenham, they couldn't have asked for a better situation here coming into this fixture. It is just 1 win in 11 for Eintracht Frankfurt coming into this match. They're winless in their last 6, whereas Spurs, despite the fact they're on a pretty horror run of fixtures in the Premier League and in Europe coming into these matches, got another big Champions League result last week, beating Borussia Dortmund 2-0, putting them in 5th place in the table, and now they're playing an already eliminated side in this final matchup, meaning that a victory here against a side that's realistically not going to be going for it will guarantee Spurs a top 8 finish, which is just staggering when you consider how poor they've been in the Premier League over the past few weeks, drawing again this time against Burnley in the relegation zone this weekend. But I actually think this is a real opportunity for them to nail down a good spot in the Champions League, giving them those couple of weeks off not having to play a playoff position because they're playing against a Frankfurt side that is seriously struggling on all fronts as things stand. In terms of the team news coming into this fixture, I would expect Frankfurt to change their starting lineup. There's no real reason for them to go for it in this fixture, other than, again, if they want that little bit of extra prize money. But big Bundesliga matches coming up for them over the next couple of weeks. There is no need for them to put any real resources into this final Champions League game when they've already been eliminated. But Colin Wendo picked up an injury at the weekend and will definitely be out for them regardless. As for Tottenham, both Pedro Porro and Christian Romero went off with knocks at the weekend game against Burnley. But as things stand, both are expected to make it for this fixture. These two actually played each other last season in the Europa League. Reminder, of course, Spurs went on to win that competition to qualify for the Champions League this year. It was a 1-1 draw at Spurs, but Spurs got the victory here by 1-0 last time out. Given recent scorelines, though, I think this one's going to be a bit more open. Frankfurt have been involved in some crazy games over the past few weeks, but I'm sticking with my gut instinct, which is that Spurs will take advantage of Frankfurt already being eliminated. I'm going for a 2-1 win to Tottenham. Now to the seriously big games. We start off with Paris Saint-Germain and Newcastle. 6th versus 7th. Both sides on the same points, which is 12. Both sides on the exact same goal difference of +5, but PSG currently ahead of Newcastle on goals scored. Last week, PSG lost in stunning fashion, losing against Sporting Lisbon in the last minute. Newcastle very comfortable in their victory over PSV Eindhoven, but they suffered a defeat this weekend against Aston Villa 2-0 at home, whereas PSG won 1-0 against Angers, meaning they have moved back to the top of Ligue 1 as things stand. And they will come into this as the strong favourites for this match. What makes this really interesting, though, is that a win for either side will, of course, guarantee them a top 8 finish in theory, assuming the sides below them don't get that massive goal difference jump. But a draw for this will probably mean that both sides end up dropping into the playoffs. And of course, defeat will basically guarantee that whichever side loses will end up in the playoff spots. There is massive, massive connotations for this fixture, whichever way the result goes, which means we could be in for one of those chaos matches here. In terms of the team news, both sides without key midfielders for this match. It looks like that PSG are going to be without both Fabian and João Neves for this fixture, whereas Newcastle are going to be without their star midfielder in Bruno Guimaraes. So both sides missing massive, massive players in that midfield battle. In the last time these two sides met, it was just a couple of years ago, the 2023 season, 23-24 season, and back then it was a 1-1 draw on this ground, and Newcastle won 4-1 at St James's Park. So it's certainly not out of the question that Newcastle can get a result here. What you would say is that since then, PSG, of course, have gone on to win the Champions League last season and do look a better side than they did a couple of years ago. I obviously have PSG as the favourites for this match, but again, I do think we could be in for a very entertaining fixture here. I'm going for the PSG victory, but I'm going to go for a 3-1 win for them. Next up is, in my opinion, the single biggest fixture of the night. We have got Napoli and we have got Chelsea. Napoli currently outside of the playoff places in the elimination zone by just 1 goal. Remember that long list of clubs that are currently on 8 points coming into this final game. Napoli are one of them, and they're currently outside of the playoff spots on goal difference by 1 goal scored. Chelsea are in 8th place in the table as things stand. They're holding on to that final top 8 spot. They're one of those sides on 13 points. I made a bit of mistake in the previous game. PSG and Newcastle both on 13 points, not 12. But Chelsea are another one of those sides on 13 points, but they are 4 goals behind Newcastle and PSG coming into this fixture, and are just 1 goal ahead of Barcelona and Sporting, who are going to be the focus of our next 2 games. So coming into this, quite literally, both sides have to win. Napoli to just get themselves into a playoff spot. Chelsea to secure that final top 8 finish. And even that's not guaranteed if Barcelona and Sporting win by more. And of course, it's Antonio Conte taking on his former side that he won Premier League titles with. And of course, there's a lot of players from Napoli that either played for Chelsea or played in the Premier League previously as well. There is so much on the line coming into this fixture. It could be absolute madness. It's not been a good week for Napoli coming into this fixture. You would have to say that. They drew last week away at Copenhagen. Not a good result for them, but it wasn't as bad as their weekend result where they were thrashed 3-0 in Serie A by Juventus, obviously another Champions League side. Much better week for Chelsea. Even though they didn't play particularly great against Paphos, they got the 1-0 victory they needed to get into this position, and then they backed it up with a 3-1 win away at Crystal Palace this weekend, meaning it's 4 wins in 5 for new boss Liam Rosenior, whereas Napoli are currently on a run of 1 win in their last 5, so you'd have to make Chelsea the slight favourites for this fixture. In terms of the team news, there is no return for former Chelsea players Kevin De Bruyne or Billy Gilmour. However, Romelu Lukaku made his return this weekend and could feature against his former club. In terms of Chelsea, no fresh concerns for them either, and Cole Palmer is expected to return to the lineup in what is the biggest Champions League game of Chelsea's season so far. So far this season, the English clubs have performed very, very well against Italian clubs. You think even like to last week, Arsenal winning at Inter, Liverpool winning at Inter. There's been some big results away in Europe for the English sides in Italy so far this season. But with everything on the line, I think we're going to see a hell of a stubborn performance from Napoli here. And I think they will get at least a point against Chelsea. I'm going to go for the result, which could mean both sides end up in the worst possible situation. And I'm going for a 2-2 draw. I can see this one potentially being settled by one of those very, very late winners. We shall see. Waiting for any of the sides to slip up above them is, of course, Barcelona, who are currently in 9th. Obviously, with PSG and Newcastle playing each other, a win for Barcelona here should, in theory, guarantee them a top 8 finish. Goal difference being the potential factor for them to still miss out. They're going to be taking on a Copenhagen side here, who, like Napoli, are in this position whereby they're on 8 points, but are currently outside the playoff spots on goal difference. So they are going to have to scrap for every single minute of this match as well. There is a world where the likes of Napoli and Copenhagen lose these matches, but if the sides above them lose their matches by more, they could still get into the playoffs. That is how crazy this final fixture could be. But of course, travelling away to Barcelona, you would not fancy them to get really anything significant from this fixture. Last week, it was a comfortable victory in the end for Barcelona away at Slavia Prague, although it wasn't the most convincing performance with their 4-2 victory. They went on to then beat Real Oviedo, bottom side in La Liga, 3-0 this weekend. As for Copenhagen, you would have heard it in the previous prediction, they ended up drawing at home to Napoli last week, and they are now coming into this having not played at the weekend as they had no competitive football in their country last weekend. In terms of the team news, we have a suspension apiece in midfield for Barcelona. Frankie de Jong is going to be missing, and for Copenhagen, Delaney is going to be out for them. It's actually been 15 years since these two sides last met, so you can't really read too much into that. With Barcelona needing to get the victory, I think they probably are going to get it. It would be a major shock if Copenhagen get anything from this fixture, although again, a reminder, they could still progress even if they lose this match. So I think they're going to be more prioritising damage limitation, looking to hit Barca on the counter-attacks and try and nick something as and when they can. I don't think it's going to be a thrashing, but I think Barcelona are going to come out on top. I'm going for a 2-0 win to them, which means the final game for the first part of this video is Athletic Club Bilbao hosting Sporting Lisbon. You know the drill by now. Sporting, 13 points, a little bit of goal difference behind Chelsea. Athletic Club Bilbao, 8 points, little bit of goal difference ahead of the likes of Napoli and Copenhagen. Massive, massive connotations again coming into this fixture. But for Bilbao, what a performance it was last week, getting a crucial 3-2 away win at Atalanta. And it means that this fixture is now in their own hands. Beat Sporting Lisbon, they are guaranteed a playoff spot. There is no way they don't get a playoff spot if they get the victory here. For Sporting, it's the same situation as the sides above them. Win this game, try and win it by as many goals as possible, and just hope that enough sides above you slip up whereby you can sneak into those top 8 finishes. But regardless, Sporting are going to be guaranteed a playoff spot whatever happens in this fixture, which is a great position for them to be in coming into this game. They, of course, beat Paris Saint-Germain last week as well. So both sides are going to be feeling full of confidence coming into this. Unfortunately, though, this weekend, Bilbao lost yet again in La Liga, going down 2-1 at Sevilla, whereas for Sporting, they won 2-1 away at Aruca, meaning it is actually 3 wins in a row for the Portuguese side. In terms of the team news, Jaru Greza is going to be suspended for Bilbao, and unfortunately for them, their defensive crisis still persists. No returns in their back line for this fixture. For Sporting, no fresh concerns, but also no returns either. So again, the likes of Quenda, Quaresma, and a couple of others still going to be out for them. These two sides did actually play each other last season, but it wasn't a friendly, and back then Sporting won 3-0, but we don't read too much into friendlies, certainly not when it comes to the stakes of this sort of fixture. All in all, I think this is going to be a very, very close affair. I just have this little sneaky feeling that Bilbao are going to be the side that comes out on top here. I think Sporting probably come into this as slight favourites, especially given their league position, but I'm going for a 2-1 win to Bilbao. That is going to conclude the first half of this video. Before we move on to the lower half of the table, let's round up what you guys have been saying regarding these 9 fixtures over on the community page. And you have gone for the following. Basically, everyone thinks that Arsenal are going to beat Kairat. Majority think Bayern are going to beat PSV, but some of you have given them a chance. Basically, everyone thinks Real Madrid are going to beat Benfica. Basically, everyone thinks Liverpool are going to beat Qarabag. Closer between Frankfurt and Spurs, but the majority have gone for Spurs. Basically, everyone thinks PSG are going to beat Newcastle. Again, close between Napoli and Chelsea, but the majority have gone for Chelsea. Basically, everyone thinks Barca are going to beat Copenhagen, and the majority have gone for Sporting to get that away win in Spain. Not really too many surprises in terms of the community predictions there. These are the top sides playing the lower sides down, so you would expect the favourites to win the vast majority of these fixtures. As always, you can have your say right now on those Europa League games, and I'll remind you of that again at the end of the video. But now it is time to move on to the rest of the table in the Champions League in this final match day. And the first fixture is 11th place side Manchester City taking on 17th place Galatasaray. Where for City, they're yet another one of those sides on 13 points. A reminder, there are actually 8 sides on 13 points going into this final match day. As for Galatasaray, they find themselves in the same spot as Qarabag, whereby they're on 10 points as things stand. So mathematically, it is still possible for them to get into the top 8. And it's also mathematically possible for them to drop out of the playoffs and get into the elimination zone. But realistically, whatever happens in this fixture, Galatasaray are going to end up in a playoff spot. So realistically, the pressure is all on Manchester City to deliver the biggest win possible, get that goal difference up to give themselves the slightest of chances of getting into a top 8 finish. What we would say, though, is for Manchester City last week, what a horrible week it was off the back of the Manchester Derby defeat. They were then beaten in spectacular fashion away in Norway by Bodo Glimt, who we're obviously going to talk about in a moment. They then got their victory this weekend against bottom side in the Premier League, Wolves, but even then wasn't the most convincing performance, to say the least. As for the Turkish side, they managed to get a home draw 1-1 against Atletico Madrid, which in my opinion is a pretty decent result, and they come into this after another victory this weekend in the Turkish League. In terms of the team news, there could be some problems for Manchester City in their midfield, as Rodri is suspended and Nico Gonzalez is still injured, meaning that they need someone to fill in that holding midfield position for this fixture. Will it come from one of the fullback areas, or will one of their midfielders drop slightly deeper? Obviously, they're still struggling in defence as well, with Gvardiol, Ruben Diaz and John Stones also all out injured. As for Galatasaray, no fresh concerns for them, and they will have former Manchester City man Ilkay Gundogan coming into this game after the back of his man of the match performance this weekend. Don't get me wrong, Manchester City have fumbled a couple of times already in Europe this season and their recent form hasn't been great. However, at home to Galatasaray, you would expect them to get the victory here, especially when you consider that they do need to get a result to give themselves any chance of getting a top 8 finish. Final part of the team news will of course be, will Erling Haaland return to the starting lineup after Mamouche filled in and scored for Man City this weekend? We shall see. Regardless, I'm going for a City win. I'm going to go for 2-1 to them. Next up is the two sides that faced the two sides that we have just spoken about. It is Atletico Madrid taking on Bodo Glimt. For Atletico Madrid, it was that 1-1 draw away at Galatasaray. For Bodo, it was that 3-1 home win over Manchester City. A brilliant performance for them, which has given them a ever so slight glimmer of hope coming into this fixture. However, they need an absolute miracle to produce the result here. They have to win at Atletico Madrid to have any chance of qualifying for the playoffs. And the problem is Atletico Madrid have won all 3 of their fixtures so far at home in the Champions League and have won all but one game in La Liga so far this season at home, drawing the only game they didn't win. So, considering Atletico Madrid have not lost at home this season and Bodo Glimt need to win, it's not really that good a look for them coming into this fixture. And of course, Atletico Madrid still have a chance of qualifying for the top 8 themselves, being the 7th of the 8th side on 13 points coming into this fixture, and with a nice 3-0 victory over Mallorca in La Liga this weekend. Bodo Glimt not playing in competitive action this weekend as their current season is still on hold. In terms of the team news, the only potential absentee for Atletico Madrid is Antoine Griezmann. No fresh concerns for Bodo. Honestly, I wish them all the best of luck. I think it'd be an absolutely incredible achievement for them to make it to the playoffs, given their result last week. Do not forget they, of course, made the Europa League semi-finals last year, did Bodo Glimt. But right here, right now, I think it would be the biggest upset of the day if they went to Atletico Madrid and got the result they needed. Not only winning, but then having the teams above them all lose in order for them to get into that position. But we shall see. Obviously, I'm going to go for Atletico Madrid victory. And I'm going to go for 4-1 to Simeone's side, because I do think that's where this game is going to go. I think Bodo are going to push really, really hard, and I think that is going to suit Atletico Madrid's counter-attacking style of play. Even though they should be the dominant side in this fixture, Bodo are the side that need to go for it. And of course, Atletico Madrid looking for that goal differential as well. I think this could be a crazy game, but I think Atletico Madrid are going to come out on top in the end. If you think Bodo Glimt's task is difficult, then USG Union Saint-Gilloise' task is even harder. Like Bodo Glimt, they currently sit on 6 points, but they have 8 more goal difference inferiority to Bodo Glimt, which means they are a long way down as things stand in 31st in the table, and they find themselves facing an Atalanta side who, despite defeat last week, are still going to be the strong favourites coming into this fixture. For USG, it was a 2-0 defeat last time out against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, and they could only back that up with a 0-0 draw against Leuven this weekend. As for Atalanta, it was that surprise 3-2 home defeat to Athletic Club Bilbao. However, they bounced back giving all their frustrations to Parma this weekend with a strong 4-0 victory, and they will still come into this as the favourites despite being the away team. And of course, they are the 8th and final side, currently on 13 points, so it's still not out of their hands that they can get into the top 8 finish, but they are relying on a fair few teams above them to either draw or lose or not win by significant margins, or Atalanta win this one by a massive, massive margin. In terms of the team news here, David is going to be suspended for Union Saint-Gilloise. No fresh concerns for Atalanta coming into this fixture. There might be a few of you thinking that USG are going to make changes for this fixture, considering it is very unrealistic that they end up qualifying for the playoffs from this position. However, again, I will remind you of that £250,000 prize money for every position you finish in the Champions League. And I think there's something like a 1.8 million prize money for winning a match in the Champions League phase. I know might not be that much. That might be for a different prize. But there's quite a lot of money on the line if you win a match in the Champions League. So there is definitely reason for USG to go for this. And I do think they are going to play their strongest available 11. However, with both sides desperate for the win, I think, again, we could be in for a very, very entertaining game here. I've obviously gone for 4-1 for Atletico Madrid in the previous fixture with that in mind. Union Saint-Gilloise and Atalanta, both desperate for big goal difference swings in this fixture. So I think we're going to have some massive end-to-end action here. I'm going to go for the Italians to come out on top at the end of it, though. I'm going for a 3-2 win to Atalanta. Next up is what should be a massive game in theory between Borussia Dortmund and Inter Milan. However, I actually think this game is pretty much as meaningless as the Arsenal Kairat game we started the video with, because after this long, long list of teams on 13 points, with Inter on 12 and Dortmund on 11, it's very, very unlikely that either of these sides end up getting into the top 8. And at the same time, it's also near impossible for either side to end up getting eliminated. In fact, Inter Milan are guaranteed to be safe from elimination. Borussia Dortmund need everything in the world to go wrong for them to get eliminated from this position. So actually, there's pretty much nothing on the line here, because neither of these sides are going to get in the top 8 and neither of these sides are going to be eliminated. So basically, they're just vying for whatever playoff position they're going to end in. And what's absolutely hilarious about this is however this result ends up, there is an actual distinct possibility that these two sides end up playing each other in the playoff round. So it could be an opportunity for these two to kind of psych each other out. But realistically, there's not actually a lot on the line coming into this. Both sides lost to clubs from North London last week. Borussia Dortmund losing 2-0 at Spurs. Inter losing 3-1 at home to Arsenal. This weekend, Borussia Dortmund picked up a 3-0 away win at Union Berlin. Inter Milan picked up a 6-2 win over Pisa. In terms of the team news, Svensson is going to be suspended for Dortmund and Sule is out injured. No fresh concerns for Inter Milan, however, no returns for Kahanoglu or Dumfries for this fixture. Last time these two sides met was back in 2019, with Dortmund getting the 3-2 victory on this ground. Honestly, I just think this is one of them games where all three results are possible. No clear favourite in my opinion. Nothing really on the line. Anything could happen. I'm just going to go for a blanket draw and go for 1-1. Realistically, this game means nothing. Next one, though, means an awful lot. We have Monaco in 21st, taking on another Italian side in Juventus in 15th. Last time out for Monaco, it was that 6-1 hammering at the hands of Real Madrid, but they finally ended their losing streak with a 0-0 draw against struggling Le Havre this weekend. For Juve, a very, very good week. 2-0 victory over Benfica to move them up into 15th place in the Champions League, and then that 3-0 win over Napoli that we spoke about earlier in Serie A, meaning they actually come into this with just 1 goal conceded in their last 5 matches. So Juve, in my opinion, the strong favourites coming into this fixture. What's important to note is that Monaco are 1 point ahead of that long list of teams currently on 8 points coming into this final fixture. So if Monaco are able to hold Juve to a draw, chances are they will be safe from elimination. But defeat to Juventus here could leave the door open for multiple clubs to leapfrog them and get them eliminated. So for Monaco, I think their priority is going to be playing for that clean sheet, but we shall see. In terms of the team news, the risk of that clean sheet has become much more vulnerable because both Eric Dyer and Wout Faes both went off injured for Monaco, joining Salisu as all centre-backs out for Monaco for this fixture. Whereas for Juventus, no fresh concerns whatsoever. Last time these two sides met was almost 10 years ago now. It was back in 2017 with Juventus beating Monaco both home and away. Again, we can't really read too much into that. However, what we can read is that very, very current form, which tells us that Juventus are the very strong favourites for this fixture. I think they'll have enough to see off a very vulnerable Monaco side as things stand. And I'm going to go for 2-0 to Juventus, which could mean that Monaco get eliminated, because look at these run of matches we have got left. Firstly, we have Club Brugge taking on Marseille. Both sides currently at risk of elimination as things stand. Brugge are the only team in the table currently on 7 points. But a victory here on paper would be enough for them to secure a playoff spot. And with a -5 goal difference, even a draw would be enough to get them above a lot of those sides on 8 points, assuming those sides on 8 points lose. So there is a real opportunity for Club Brugge to get themselves a playoff spot from this position. They beat Kairat 4-1 last week. They face a Marseille side who are currently down in 19th in the Champions League table after losing 3-0 at home to Liverpool last week. Like fellow French side Monaco, they find themselves on 9 points, but they have the better goal difference. So in theory, they should already be safe in their playoff spot. However, if they get themselves at least a point here, they'll be guaranteed that all-important playoff spot. They bounce back from that 3-0 defeat to Liverpool by beating the then league leaders in Ligue 1 Lens this weekend with a massive 3-1 victory, which has really livened up the Ligue 1 title race as things stand. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for the home side, but Marseille could be struggling in defence with Benjamin Pavard suspended and Aguerd still not fully fit after returning from AFCON. Big problem for Bruges, though, is that they still have their main man in Cholis out for this fixture. He is both their top scorer and top assister in the league this season. They obviously missed last week's game, which they still won 4-1 without him. With Bruges needing the victory, I actually think this suits Marseille down to the ground. They have a lot of pace on the break, and I think that is going to be the difference in this fixture. Bruges cannot afford a draw here, so it just makes it really difficult for them. And I do think the French side are going to come out on top in the end. I'm going for a 3-1 victory to Marseille. Next up, it is Bayer Leverkusen, who are going to be taking on Villarreal. And if you could handpick your opportune opponent for this final fixture, you would pick being at home against a side that has already been eliminated from the competition. And that is exactly what Leverkusen have drawn for this match. They find themselves in 20th place, having 9 points after losing 2-0 at Olympiacos last week. But they're taking on a Villarreal side who have 1 point from their 7 games so far and are already eliminated from the Champions League and have lost their last 3 matches in all competitions, losing 2-0 against Real Madrid in La Liga this weekend, and meaning that they're likely to rest all of their key players to get themselves back in that La Liga picture this weekend. It's the ideal scenario for Leverkusen coming into this match. Yes, Leverkusen had lost their previous fixtures, their last 3 previous fixtures before their victory this weekend over Werder Bremen, but you have to fancy the German side to be the favourites for this fixture. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for either side here, but as we mentioned, Villarreal are likely to make wholesale changes to this game. Marino is also suspended for them. It's been 10 years since these two sides last met. Back then, it actually finished 0-0. I wouldn't say that's out of the question here, because I think a point will be enough for Leverkusen, but surely with Villarreal playing for nothing and Leverkusen needing the victory, it's going to be a German victory. I'm going for 2-0 to Bayer Leverkusen. Our penultimate game, also absolutely massive. Ajax had 0 points at the start of Matchday 6. They won on Matchday 6 away at Qarabag. They won on Matchday 7 away at Villarreal, and it gives them a shot at Olympiacos here. Victory for Ajax would move them on to 9 points, which I think will be enough to get them into the playoff positions, given the amount of teams above them I think are going to lose based on the predictions I've already given. They're playing against Olympiacos, the side right in the middle of that list of 8 points, and the side currently occupying that final playoff spot, knowing that they need to get at least a point from this match, otherwise they're going to be eliminated. Olympiacos managed to get the draw against Napoli last time out, but crucially they are only ahead of Ajax by 2 points, meaning that if Ajax win, they are guaranteed to go above Olympiacos going into this final fixture, and given the amount of tides in and around them, a draw for Olympiacos may not be enough either. So both sides are going to be desperate to get the victory coming into this game. This weekend, both sides actually won without conceding. However, Olympiacos did it by changing their entire starting lineup, whereas Ajax still played their full first team. So Olympiacos have the freshness advantage. Ajax have the home field advantage. There is still one potential injury concern for Olympiacos as Chiquinho went off last week with an injury. However, there is no fresh concerns for the Dutch side coming into this fixture. These are two very historic European sides with a lot of history in this competition. I think right here, right now, there is very little to split between these two sides. If I had to pick a favourite on paper, I would go for Olympiacos. However, I just have this little feeling that after the last couple of games, Ajax are going to come into this and steal the victory. Will it be enough to secure a playoff spot? We shall see. I'm going for 2-1 to Ajax, which means last and certainly not least, it could be our final trip to Cyprus in the Champions League this season, because we have Paphos on 6 points, still fighting with a chance here, and they're taking on an already eliminated side in Slavia Prague. This is the fixture that all the sides in those playoff/elimination zone spots are fearing. A side out of the playoffs playing a side that is already eliminated, knowing that a victory will move them up to 9 points and likely eliminate at least one team from the Champions League with a victory here. Last time out, Paphos fell 1-0 at Stamford Bridge. Slavia Prague lost 4-2 at home to Barcelona, and it means that coming into this, Slavia haven't picked up a single victory in the Champions League so far, with 3 draws and 4 defeats. Paphos with 1 win and 3 draws so far, so in theory, the draw is the most likely result, but now Paphos have to get the victory, and with Slavia already eliminated, you'd have to make the Cypriot side as favourites for this match. In terms of the team news, Paphos are going to be without Sunjic for this match as he is suspended. Slavia have no fresh concerns, but their domestic season starts this weekend. They've not played since the Barcelona game, but their domestic season starts this weekend. So in theory, they are going to be resting their key players for this match. But again, I'll make one more final reminder that there is still £250,000 on the line for every position you finish in the Champions League. And of course, that prize money for winning a match in the Champions League league phase. There is still reason for Slavia to go for this. Realistically, though, I don't think they will. And that leaves the door open for Paphos to get the victory. I think they are going to do it. I think they're going to win it. I don't think they're going to win it by much. I'm only going to go for 1-0. But a 1-0 win for Paphos could have massive, massive ramifications for these playoff spots. It's going to be an absolutely chaotic night of Champions League action for you tomorrow. Before I leave you, let's round up what you guys have said regarding these final 9 fixtures taking place tomorrow. And you have gone for the following. The majority think Man City are going to beat Galatasaray. Basically, everyone thinks Atletico Madrid are going to beat Bodo Glimt. The majority think Atalanta are going to beat USG. Very close between Dortmund and Inter, but the majority have gone for Inter. The majority think Juve are going to beat Monaco. Again, very close between Club Brugge and Marseille, but the majority have gone for Marseille. Vast majority think that Bayer Leverkusen are going to beat Villarreal. Even closer still between Ajax and Olympiacos, but the majority have gone for Ajax. And the majority think that Paphos will get the job done to cause that chaos for those final playoff spots. That is going to be it for today's video. I'm going to put my predictions back up on the screen for you one last time and say once again, a massive thank you very much for watching. I think we're in for some real drama tomorrow. I think there's going to be some major upsets. Have I called any of them? We'll find out. Probably not, but as we always say, these videos are just for a bit of fun. Hopefully you guys have got enough insight to make your own predictions for this video. As always, let me know all of your thoughts down in the comment section below. We're doing this all over again tomorrow in the Europa League, where it's arguably even more chaotic in that competition. So look out for that video first thing tomorrow morning. A final thank you very much for watching once again, and I'll see you tomorrow.